morning, 2T. It's week 3, our last week in lockdown. This week in maths, we're going to be looking at fractions. The learning intention for today's lesson is we are learning to recognise when objects, shapes and collections have been shared into halves and quarters. Our success criteria: I can use concrete materials to model a half or a quarter of a whole object. I can create quarters by halving one half. I can describe the equal parts of a whole object. I can recognise that fractions refer to equal parts of a whole. I can recognise when objects and shapes have been shared into halves and quarters. So before we start, let's just quickly go back and review what halves and quarters are. So what is a half? How can you tell if something is one half of a whole? Look at these food items. They have been cut into halves, which means that they have been cut into two equal parts. Now, the most important word there is equal. We use the term one half to mean one part and halves with H-A-L-V-E-S when referring to both parts. Can you see the shapes down the bottom? They've been divided into equal parts. These parts are halves because there are two equal parts to make up the whole shape. One half of each shape has been shaded. When we're talking about quarters, look at these objects below. The chocolate bar has been divided into quarters, which means there are 4 equal squares of chocolate. The clock has been divided into quarters. There are 4 equal parts of the clock. These shapes have been divided into equal parts. These parts are quarters because they are 4 equal parts which make up the whole shape. 1/4 of each shape has been shaded. So now we've revised what halves and quarters are, it's now time to use that knowledge to complete the following activities. For all activities today, in today's lesson, boys and girls, you can use it a different number of ways. You can print off these slides and use them as worksheets. You can copy the shapes and complete them on a piece of paper, or the easiest way is to complete the task on the Jamboard. You can use the tools and you don't have to worry about taking any photos, and you don't have to worry about uploading them into the week 3 completed work document. So our first activity today, if you're working at home on a piece of paper or on the worksheet, you'll need a red or a blue pencil. The 6 shapes below have been divided into either halves or quarters. If the shape is to be divided into halves, I want you to colour in 1/2 in red. If the shape is being divided into quarters, I want you to colour in 1/4 in blue. For this next activity, we're going to learn a strategy on how to find halves of a large number of objects. Now, for some of you, you're going to think, oh, this is really easy, I don't need to do it. And probably you don't, and that's fine. But I know there are some members in the class who do need to do this, so I'm going to demonstrate the strategy for you. So in your resource pack, you'll have a circle that looks like this, and you'll need to get some counters. Now, counters can be anything that you have at home. It could be pegs, it could be bits of Legos, it could be coins, it could be bits of pasta. You can use that instead of having a counter. All right, so watch the strategy. Imagine I've got 14 counters in front of me, and I don't know what half of 14 is. So this is how I'm going to work it out. I'm going to share out my counters equally using both sides of the circle. Let's watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Right, so now I've divided my counters into 2 equal groups. I can see I've got 7 on one side and 7 on the other, and they're both equal, so I know I've done it correctly. So I know that 1/2 of 14 is 7. Right, boys and girls, if you're working on the Jamboard, this is what you will see, except at the side, I've even made counters for you, so you don't even have to make any counters. So I want you to find out 1/2 of 14, write it in the box, 1/2 of 22, and 1/2 of 32. Now, boys and girls, I'm going to use that exact same strategy to work out how to divide a collection of objects into quarters. So once again, now I've divided see how my circle, I've divided my half in half again, and now I've got my 4 quarters. And I'm going to use that same strategy. Once again, I'm going to start with a really easy number. So this time I want you to imagine I've got 12 counters in front of me. And I'm going to work out what a quarter of 12 is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, I've shared out all my counters and I can see that each quarter I have 3 counters. Each quarter is equal, so I know I've done it correctly. So I can say that a quarter of 12 is 3. Once again, boys and girls, if you're working on the Jamboard, this is what your next slide will look like. I've got counters at the side, so you're going to find out what a quarter of 8 is, a quarter of 1/4 of 28, 1/4 of 20, and 1/4 of 32. So here's another strategy of how to divide a collection of objects into halves and quarters. Look at these circles. There are 18 altogether, and I've divided them into 2 equal halves. So I lined them up and put them into halves. And you can see that 1/2 of 18 is 9. Down the bottom, this time I've got 8 counters. And I'm divide them into 4 equal quarters. There are 2 circles in each quarter. So 1/4 has been shaded in, therefore 1/4 of 8 is 2. Right, now I'm going to use that same strategy to find a half of a collection of different items. On this page, I've got fish and shells. Count the number of items in each collection. Then I want you to circle 1/2 of the collection and complete the number sentence. You can also draw on a line halfway down to show the equal number on both sides. You can see I've done the first one with you with the fish. There were 8 fish altogether, and halfway I found that there was 4 on each side. So 1/2 of 8 is 4. Now let's look at the fish below it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 1/2 of 12. I think I'm going to count, well, if I count, I'm going to put my line down. I think this is half. So 1/2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I right? Let's count the other half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am. I've got 2 equal parts. So 1/2 of 12 is 6. Last one with our shells, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so what's half of 14? Well, I think my halfway would go there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on one half, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the other. So 1/2 of 14 is 7. So I know lots of people were having trouble with this type of activity when we did fractions before. It's where you have a collection of objects, and usually they will say circle maybe a half, maybe in this case it's circle a quarter. So to help me, another strategy I'm going to use counters to help me. So the first thing I need to do is find out how many apples there are, and I'm going to replace them with counters. So I'm going to count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So I'm going to put 16 counters down there. And I'm going to line them up. I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 counters. And then I'm going to put my line down the middle because I'm going to separate my counters into halves. Can you see that 1/2 is 8 and the other half is 8? And they're both equal groups. So I know that a half of 16 is 8. But I have to find quarters. So that means I have to half the 8 again to find the quarters. So if I split my 8 into halves, that means 4 goes in each quarter. So 1/4 of 16 is 4. So now it's your turn. You're going to use that same strategy if you like, using counters. Once again, this is a copy of what you'd find on the Jamboard. At the side, I've got all the counters for you, so you can use counters. So you're going to find 1/4 of the collection of apples and 1/4 of the collection of stamps. And can you circle the quarter for me? In fact, what I would do first is divide it into halves and then divide it into quarters, and then you can complete the number sentence. Right, once again, here's a picture of what you'll find on the Jamboard, and at the side, once again, I've got counters if you'd like to use them to help you. So you can count things up and replace all the items with a counter, and you can move them around to help you divide them into halves and quarters. Our first one is, you have to circle a word either halves or quarters. Have the apples been divided into halves or quarters? Number 2, draw a ring around 1/2 of the ice creams. Number 3, draw a ring around 1/4 of the coins. So here's our last task. Boys and girls, this is a copy of what you'd find in the Jamboard, except at the side I've got piles of counters if you need to use them to work out what the fractions of these collection of items are. So in some of them you're going to find out you're going to circle a quarter, and others you're going to be circling what a half is. Make sure before you start that you count the total number of items carefully before you start. Now you can use any of the strategies that I've shown you today on how to find the total quarter or half of your collection of objects. If you're working on a piece of paper, please take a photo of it and upload it into our week 3 completed work document. If you're working on the Jamboard, that's easy. You don't have to do a thing. The answers are, you just put your answers on there. I can see what you're doing.